Chosen ones, be careful. You are 100% right, this person is trying. What if the uneasy feeling you keep pushing down every time you're around them isn't paranoia at all? What if your gut has been trying to warn you for weeks, maybe months, and you've been the one telling it to be quiet? Before you scroll past this, I need you to actually stop for a second. Because this message isn't landing in front of you by accident. Somewhere in your life right now, there is a person whose energy doesn't sit right with you. And you've been doubting that feeling instead of trusting it. You are not overreacting. You are not imagining things. You are 100% right. Are you ready to finally hear what your intuition has been trying to tell you? You know that feeling, don't you? The one where everything someone says sounds fine on the surface, but something underneath it makes your stomach tighten. You smile back at them, you act normal. But afterward, alone, you replay the conversation and think, something about that wasn't right. And instead of listening to that instinct, you talk yourself out of it. You tell yourself you're being too sensitive, too suspicious, too much. You make excuses for them because it feels easier than admitting what your body already knows. Have you been quietly explaining away red flags because you didn't want to believe someone you care about could actually be capable of hurting you? That exhausting cycle of doubting yourself to protect someone else. That's exactly where we start today. Why your body knows before your mind admits. There's something almost nobody explains clearly. Your intuition doesn't work the way logic does. It doesn't wait for proof, for a confession, for undeniable evidence laid out in front of you. It reads micro-signals. A pause that lasted half a second too long. A story that didn't quite add up. A tone that shifted the moment you asked the wrong question. Your conscious mind might miss all of that. Your nervous system doesn't. That's why you can feel unsettled around someone before you can explain exactly why. Your body already processed the inconsistency. Your mind just hasn't caught up with the translation yet. Have you ever felt tense around someone without being able to point to one specific thing they did wrong? That tension is data, not overthinking, data. The excuses we make for people. We don't want to lose think about someone in your life right now who's given you that uneasy feeling. Now think about how many excuses you've already built for them without even realizing it. They're just going through a hard time. They didn't mean it like that. Maybe I misunderstood. Here's the pattern worth noticing. The amount of excuse making you're doing for someone is often directly proportional to how much you don't want to face what they actually are. It's not that you're naive. It's that admitting the truth would cost you something. A friendship, a relationship, a version of your life you'd have to rebuild. How many excuses have you quietly made for someone simply because the truth felt too expensive to accept? If this is hitting close to home right now, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because part 2 goes even deeper into exactly how to tell the difference between a misunderstanding and a genuine warning sign. The specific kind of lie that feels like truthsome manipulation isn't loud. It isn't obvious lying you can catch with a simple fact check. It's subtler than that. It's someone shaping a story just enough that it feels true, while quietly leaving out the one detail that would change everything if you knew it. They're not always lying to your face. Sometimes they're just controlling what you get to see, carefully enough that you never notice the parts that are missing. And because nothing they said was technically false, you convince yourself there's nothing to worry about. Have you ever found out something later that made you realize someone had been telling you the truth? Just never the whole truth. That gap between what's said and what's hidden is exactly where trust quietly gets broken. Why? They tricketed someone like you. Here's something worth sitting with, even though it's uncomfortable. People who operate this way don't choose their targets randomly. They tend to gravitate toward people who are generous, who give others the benefit of the doubt, who would rather believe the best in someone than assume the worst. That's not a flaw in you. That's actually a sign of your character. But it does mean you need to hold that generosity a little more carefully, because the very kindness that makes you a good person is sometimes the exact quality someone else is quietly counting on to get away with something. Has your willingness to see the good in people ever been used against you by someone who knew exactly how far your patience would stretch? The moment the story stopped adding up, think back to the first time something didn't quite fit. Maybe it was a detail that changed between two different tellings of the same story. Maybe it was a reaction that felt disproportionate to the situation. Too defensive, too quick, too rehearsed. Maybe it was simply a feeling that arrived before you had words for it. That moment mattered more than you gave it credit for at the time. Most people can point back to an exact instant where they first sensed something was off, long before they had any proof. And most people, looking back, wish they had trusted that moment instead of talking themselves out of it. Can you remember the exact moment something first felt wrong, even if you brushed it aside back then? If you can, that memory is worth taking seriously now. If this is stirring something you've been avoiding, subscribe now, because part 2 walks through exactly how to respond once you finally admit what you already sense. Why confronting them directly often backfires. Here's something that might save you a lot of pain. People who are being dishonest with you rarely respond to direct confrontation the way you'd hope. Instead of a calm explanation, you often get deflection. Instead of accountability, you often get anger turned back onto you, as if questioning them was the real offense. This is one of the clearest signs something is actually wrong. Not the mistake itself, but the disproportionate reaction to being questioned about it. Someone with nothing to hide usually responds to a fair question with patience. Someone hiding something responds with a fight. Have you ever asked a simple, reasonable question and been met with an explosion of anger instead of an answer? That reaction tells you more than any explanation ever could. The cost of ignoring what you already know. Here's the part that's hardest to admit. Every time you override your intuition to keep the peace, you teach yourself to distrust your own instincts a little more. And that has a cost far beyond this one relationship or situation. It slowly erodes your ability to trust yourself in every area of your life. The goal isn't to become suspicious of everyone. The goal is to finally start honoring the signals your body has been sending you all along, instead of silencing them to avoid an uncomfortable conversation. What has it cost you, over time, to keep dismissing your own instincts just to avoid conflict? You are apt to trust yourself. Now you don't need a full confession. You don't need airtight proof laid out perfectly in front of you before you're allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to trust the discomfort you've been feeling, even if you can't yet explain every detail of it. Your intuition was never the problem. Doubting it was. If you finally let yourself believe what you've known all along, what would you do differently starting today? You've spent so much energy explaining away a feeling that was trying to protect you, making excuses for someone who never had to earn the benefit of the doubt in the first place. Doubting yourself to avoid an uncomfortable truth. That instinct in you, The one that's been whispering something isn't right was never wrong. It was working exactly as it should. This is only part 1. Part 2 goes deeper into how to actually respond once you accept what your gut has been telling you, and how to protect your peace without losing yourself in the process. If this message reached something real in you tonight, don't let it end here. Subscribe now, because part 2 continues exactly where this left off. Trust architected sequential narrative progression with fresh conceptual layers. Architected sequential narrative progression with fresh conceptual layers. Skosen, once we talked about the discomfort you've been dismissing, the excuses you've been making, the moment something first felt wrong that you talked yourself out of. So today, let's go further. What do you actually do once you finally admit you were right all along? Because knowing something is wrong is one thing. Knowing how to protect yourself without losing your mind, your peace, or your dignity in the process, that's a completely different challenge. Are you ready to talk about what comes after the realization? Here's what nobody tells you about finally accepting the truth about someone. The realization itself doesn't feel like relief. It feels like grief, because once you stop making excuses, you have to face what's actually in front of you. That someone you trusted, maybe someone you love, has been showing you exactly who they are, and you simply didn't want to see it. That's a painful place to stand. Not because you were foolish, but because caring about someone and being deceived by them can exist in the same moment. Have you ever felt sad and validated at the exact same time, the moment you finally admitted the truth to yourself? That mixed feeling is normal. And today, we work through it together. Why admitting it feels like losing something when you finally accept that someone has been deceiving you? You're not just losing the illusion of their honesty. You're losing the version of the relationship you thought you had. The friendship you believed was solid. The partner you believed was fully present. The family member you believed had your back completely. That's a real loss, even if the person is still standing right in front of you. You're mourning something that was never actually real, and that kind of grief is disorienting because there's no clear ending to point to. Just a slow, uncomfortable recognition that the picture in your head didn't match reality. What version of this relationship are you actually grieving now that you can see it clearly? You don't owe them your silence. Here's something important. Once you know what you know, you are not obligated to pretend you don't. So many people stay quiet about what they've noticed because they're afraid of the conflict that comes with naming it. But your silence doesn't protect you. It usually just protects them. You don't have to have a dramatic confrontation if that's not your style. But you also don't have to keep performing trust you no longer feel, just to keep things comfortable for someone who hasn't earned that comfort. Have you been protecting someone else's comfort by staying quiet about something that's actually hurting you? If this is resonating with something you're currently sitting with, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because part 3 goes deeper into how to actually set boundaries with someone like this without losing yourself, why they might turn it around on you. Here's something to prepare for, because it happens more often than people expect. The moment you start pulling back, start asking harder questions, start protecting yourself, some people will flip the story entirely and make you the problem. Suddenly you're too sensitive. You're creating drama. You're always looking for something to be upset about. This isn't an accident. It's a pattern that shifts the focus away from their behavior and onto your reaction to it. So you spend your energy defending yourself instead of holding them accountable? Has someone ever managed to make you feel like the difficult one, right after you finally noticed something they were doing wrong? Recognizing that pattern is often the moment it loses its power over you. The difference between forgiveness and access. Here's a distinction worth making clearly. You can forgive someone without giving them the same access to your life they used to have. Forgiveness is something you do for your own peace. It doesn't require you to pretend nothing happened, and it definitely doesn't require you to hand back the same trust that was already broken once. A lot of people confuse forgiveness with forgetting, and that confusion keeps them stuck in cycles with people who've proven, more than once, that they can't be trusted with the same level of closeness. Can you release the resentment without reopening the same door that led to this pain in the first place? Listening to the people who saw it before you did. Think about this for a moment. Has anyone in your life ever gently mentioned something about this person before you were ready to hear it? A friend who seemed hesitant around them. A family member who asked a careful question that you brushed off at the time. Sometimes the people around us notice patterns before we're emotionally ready to accept them. That doesn't mean you should have listened blindly to everyone else's opinion, but it might be worth going back, now that you can see more clearly, and considering what those early warnings were actually trying to tell you. Did someone try to warn you gently before you were ready to hear it? If that question is sitting heavy with you right now, this is exactly the kind of truth this series keeps unfolding. Subscribe now, because part 3 dives into rebuilding trust in your own judgment after something like this. Why you're not too much for noticing. One of the most damaging things this kind of experience can do is make you doubt your own perception going forward. You start to wonder if you're just someone who overanalyzes everything, someone who can't simply relax and trust people the normal way everyone else seems to. But noticing details, patterns, inconsistencies, that's not a character flaw, that's awareness. The problem was never that you noticed too much. The problem was that you doubted what you noticed for far too long. Have you started to believe you're too much simply because you were finally paying enough attention? You're not too much. You were just right. Protecting your peace without becoming bitter. Here's a balance worth striving for. You can protect yourself from someone without letting the experience turn you cold toward everyone else. It's tempting, after being deceived, to build walls so high that nobody gets close enough to hurt you again. But that's not protection. That's isolation dressed up as wisdom. The goal isn't to trust no one. The goal is to trust more selectively, more slowly, based on actual patterns of behavior, rather than good first impressions or convincing words. How can you protect your heart from this specific person without closing it off to everyone who actually deserves your trust? The final truth for today: you were right. You've always been right, from the very first moment something felt off. And accepting that truth, even though it hurts, is the first real step toward getting your power back. You don't have to explode. You don't have to seek revenge or prove anything to anyone. You simply have to stop doubting what you already know and start making decisions based on that truth, instead of the version of them you wish were real. If you fully trusted your own judgment from this point forward, what would you do differently in this exact situation? You've walked through the grief of finally seeing clearly, the fear of being blamed for noticing, and the delicate balance between protecting yourself and staying open to the people who actually deserve your trust. Your instincts were never broken. They were working the whole time, waiting for you to finally listen. There's more ahead. Part 3 goes into exactly how to rebuild your confidence in your own judgment, and how to move forward without carrying this experience as a wound that colors everything after it. If this message is helping you see your situation clearly, subscribe now, because Part 3 continues exactly where this left off. You were right. Now walk forward like you know it, resolved to sustain established narrative momentum and quality. Resolved to sustain established narrative momentum and quality. Kosen Ones. Be careful. You are 100% right. This person is trying. In Part 1, we talked about the discomfort you kept dismissing. In Part 2, we talked about the grief of finally seeing clearly, and the courage it takes to stop protecting someone who never protected you. Today, we finish this journey by answering the question underneath everything. How do you actually move forward without letting this experience quietly rewrite how you see yourself and everyone after them? Because the real danger isn't just what this person did. It's what you might let it do to the rest of your life if you don't heal it properly. Are you ready to close this chapter for good? The problem. Here's what tends to happen after something like this. You don't just walk away from the person, you walk away carrying them with you. Every new person who enters your life gets quietly measured against the fear this situation created. Every kind gesture gets a second look, searching for the catch. Every relationship starts to feel like something to brace for instead of something to enjoy. That's exhausting, and it's not actually protection. It's a shadow this person still casts over your life, long after they've stopped having any real access to it. Have you noticed yourself treating new people like suspects, simply because of what one person put you through? That pattern is exactly what we're releasing today. You can't pour the past into every future relationship. It's natural, after being deceived, to want an early warning system for every relationship that follows. But here's the danger in that. If you treat every new person as guilty until proven innocent, you end up punishing people who never did anything to deserve your suspicion, and you exhaust yourself in the process. The lesson from this experience was never trust no one. The lesson was pay attention to patterns, not promises. Those are two very different filters, and only one of them lets you actually live an open, connected life going forward. Are you filtering new people through fair attention, or through the fear this one person left behind? Rebuilding trust in your own judgment. Here's something worth naming clearly. The hardest trust to rebuild after something like this often isn't trust in other people. It's trust in yourself. You start to wonder how you missed it, how you let it go on as long as it did, whether your judgment can actually be relied on at all. But look back honestly at this whole journey. You did notice. You noticed early, and often, before you had the courage to fully believe it. Your judgment wasn't broken. It was working the entire time. You just weren't ready yet to act on what it was telling you. If you gave yourself credit for everything you actually noticed, instead of blaming yourself for how long it took to act, how would that change how you see yourself right now? If this is landing somewhere real, that's exactly why this series was written. Subscribe now, because there's more waiting for the next chapter you'll need this kind of clarity for. The difference between cautious and closed-door. There's a version of moving forward that looks like wisdom, but is actually just fear wearing a disguise. It sounds like, I'll never let anyone that close again. It looks like testing people constantly, waiting for them to fail, refusing real closeness, because closeness is what led to being hurt the first time. Real caution is different. Real caution watches for actual patterns of dishonesty, inconsistent stories, disproportionate reactions, behavior that doesn't match words over time. It doesn't punish people in advance for a crime they haven't committed. It simply stays observant, while still allowing genuine connection to exist. Is the way you're protecting yourself now actually wisdom, or is it just fear standing guard at the door? What this experience actually taught you, step back for a moment and look at what you've gained through all of this, painful as it was. You now know what manipulation feels like before it's fully proven. You know how disproportionate anger during a simple question is often a sign of something hidden. You know the specific excuses you're prone to making for people you don't want to lose, which means you can catch yourself doing it faster next time. None of that knowledge existed in you before this happened. It came at a cost, but it's real, and it's yours now, permanently. What specific skill did this experience teach you about reading people that you didn't have before? Letting go of the need for them to admit, there's something that might be holding you back from fully moving forward. The hope that this person will eventually admit what they did, that they'll finally see it, apologize genuinely, validate everything you went through. That moment might never come, and waiting for it keeps a piece of your peace tied to someone who's already shown you they're not likely to give you what you need. You don't need their confession to know your truth is real. You already know. Their admission was never actually required. Are you still waiting for validation from someone who's already proven they're not going to give it to you? If you're ready to release that need today, this is exactly the release this series was building toward. Subscribe now, because more of these truths are waiting for whenever you need them next. Choosing Wu gets to stay in your life now. At the end of this, you get to decide, clearly and intentionally, who actually earns a place close to you moving forward. Not based on how convincing someone sounds, not based on how long you've known them, not based on guilt or obligation, but based on actual, observed consistency between what someone says and what someone does. That's not coldness. That's finally applying the wisdom this whole experience cost you something to learn. If you only let people close based on demonstrated consistency instead of convincing words, who in your life right now would actually stay? The person you've become through this. You are not the same person who first felt that quiet unease and talked yourself out of it. You are someone now who trusts their own instincts faster, who recognizes manipulation earlier, who understands the specific ways people hide things and the specific reactions that reveal them. That person is more protected than they used to be, not because the world got safer, but because you got wiser. That's not something this experience took from you. That's something it gave you, even though you never asked for the lesson in the way it arrived. Can you see the wiser, more discerning version of yourself that this whole experience helped create? The final truth: you were right from the beginning. Every uneasy feeling, every unexplainable tension, every moment your gut spoke before your mind had proof, all of it was real. And all of it deserved to be trusted much sooner than you allowed yourself to trust it. Now you know. And knowing changes everything moving forward. Not because you'll never be tested again, but because you now carry the exact awareness needed to trust yourself the moment it matters most. If your intuition has never once actually failed you, only your willingness to believe it. Are you finally ready to trust it completely from here forward? Series finale. You've walked through all three parts of this journey. From the discomfort you dismissed, through the painful grief of finally seeing clearly, to the wisdom this whole experience built inside you that nothing can take back now. You were right the entire time. And more importantly, you're stronger now because of what it took to finally admit it. If this series meant something real to you, don't let it end here. Subscribe now, because there's always another message waiting for exactly the moment you need it most. And this channel isn't finished showing up for you yet. Trust yourself completely from here forward. You were right, and now you're free.